The floof lay dying at the human's feet, its frail body broken and bleeding from the Zorgak's overseer's brutal beating. Alan Freeman felt a familiar rage boiling up inside him, the same white-hot fury that had driven him to rebel against the tyrannical Zorgak's empire years ago, leading to countless bloody battles and unspeakable atrocities. But the fury was tempered now by the compassion that had led Alan to this remote planet of Lemnoria, where he sought to start anew as a xenozoologist, studying and protecting the galaxy's rare and endangered creatures. And in the innocent eyes of this battered floof, he saw a kindred spirit, a fellow underdog dismissed and abused by the cruel Zorgak's regime. Alan knelt beside the floof, its pastel fur matted with crimson blood, and gathered the tiny creature into his arms. "Easy now, little one," he murmured, his voice cracking with emotion. "I've got you. You're safe now." The floof whimpered softly, its wide eyes gazing up at Alan with a mix of fear, pain, and something else, something ancient and knowing that sent a shiver down the human spine. In that moment, Alan knew that this was no ordinary creature, no mere victim of Zorgak's cruelty. This floof, which he would come to name Linux, was special, unique, perhaps even the key to unraveling the secrets of the galaxy itself and breaking the Zorgak's iron grip on power. But first, Alan would have to protect and nurture this fragile being, to help it heal and grow strong in a universe that had only ever seen it as weak and worthless. It was a daunting task, but as Alan cradled Linux close to his chest, feeling the floof's heartbeat fluttering against his own, he knew he would do whatever it took to keep this precious creature safe. For in saving Linux, Alan just might save himself and redeem the sins of his war-torn past. And together, this unlikely pair of human and floof might just change the fate of the galaxy, one small act of compassion at a time. As the days passed, Alan marveled at the changes in Linux. The once frail floof grew at an astonishing rate, its pastel fur darkening to a rich, iridescent blue-purple. Muscles rippled beneath its sleek coat, and its eyes shone with a keen intelligence that seemed to deepen with each passing hour. Alan and Linux spent their days exploring the lush forests of Lemnoria, forging an unbreakable bond through their shared experiences. They communicated effortlessly, Linux's thoughts flowing into Alan's mind like a gentle stream. The human marveled at the floof's insights, its understanding of the world around them far beyond what he had ever imagined possible. But their idyllic existence was shattered by the arrival of Commander Zaxxon and his Zorgak's troops. The Overseer's eyes gleamed with malice as he ordered his soldiers to capture Linux. "Seize that abomination," he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. "It must be studied and then exterminated for the glory of the Zorgak's empire." Alan and Linux fled into the wilderness, the human's heart pounding as he raced through the tangled undergrowth with his companion by his side. They sought refuge in a hidden cave system, the damp air heavy with the scent of moss and ancient secrets. As they ventured deeper into the caves, Alan's flashlight beam fell upon a series of intricate carvings etched into the stone walls. The images depicted floofs, tall and regal, standing alongside humanoid figures in intricate robes. The carvings hinted at a long-forgotten symbiosis between the two species, a bond that had once shaped the destiny of Lemnoria itself. News of Linux's transformation spread like wildfire among the human settlers, each of whom had taken in floofs of their own. They watched in awe as their companions underwent similar changes, growing in strength and intellect, their bonds with their human friends deepening with each passing day. Sarah Hawkins, a fiery-haired woman with a quick wit and a fierce loyalty to her floof companion, Zephyr, emerged as a leader among the settlers. She rallied them to stand together against the Zorgak's threat, to protect their floof friends at all costs. Together, Alan and Sarah uncovered the hidden Zorgak's research facility, a stark concrete bunker that stood in sharp contrast to the vibrant beauty of Lemnoria's wilderness. They watched in horror as captured floofs were dragged into the facility, their cries of pain and terror echoing through the air. With Linux and Zephyr at their side, Alan and Sarah mounted a daring rescue mission. They infiltrated the facility, their floof companions displaying astonishing abilities as they battled the Zorgak's guards. Linux moved with lightning speed, its razor-sharp claws slicing through metal and flesh alike, while Zephyr manipulated energy fields to shield its human friends from harm. The rescue was a success, but the cost was high. The Zorgax, enraged by the loss of their research subjects, launched a full-scale invasion of Lemnoria. The sky darkened with the shadows of their ships, the ground trembling beneath the treads of their war machines. Alan, Sarah, and their floof companions led the desperate evacuation of the planet, herding the settlers and their floof friends onto a fleet of hastily assembled ships. As they blasted off into the unknown reaches of space, Alan looked back at the planet that had become his home, his heart heavy with the knowledge that they might never return. But even in the face of this uncertain future, Alan drew strength from the presence of Lionix at his side. Together, they would unravel the secrets of the floof's origins and find a way to defeat the Zorgax, regardless of the cost. For in the bond between human and floof, Alan had found something worth fighting for, a connection that transcended the boundaries of species and the cruelty of empires. The darkness of space enveloped their small fleet as Alan gazed out the viewscreen, Linux's warm presence at his side a constant comfort. The floof's iridescent fur shimmered in the dim light of the bridge, its eyes reflecting the pinpricks of distant stars. "Alan, we've picked up something on long-range scanners." Sarah's voice cut through his reverie. She stood at the helm, her fingers flying over the controls as Zephyr perched on her shoulder, its tail curled protectively around her neck. Alan leaned forward, squinting at the readout. "A derelict ship? Zorgax make?" Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "Looks like a battleship. No life signs detected." "We need supplies," Alan mused, scratching Linux behind the ears. The floof rumbled in agreement, projecting an image of dwindling food stores into Alan's mind. Hours later, their shuttle docked with the abandoned Zorgax vessel. Alan, Sarah, and their floof companions stepped into the eerily silent corridors, the beam of their flashlights cutting through the gloom. "This way," Linux's thoughts guided them, leading the group deeper into the ship's bowels. They passed abandoned crew quarters and lifeless command centers until they reached a heavily reinforced door. Zephyr's fur crackled with energy as it approached the door, its paws leaving faint luminescent trails on the metal floor. With a gesture from the floof, the door's locking mechanism disengaged, and it slid open with a hiss. The chamber beyond was unlike anything they had encountered on the ship. Ancient artifacts lined the walls and strange symbols covered every surface. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a softly glowing crystal. "What is this place?" Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Alan ran his hand over the inscriptions, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's a history of the floofs." As he deciphered the cryptic text, the truth of the floof's origins unfolded before them. The diminutive creatures they had known were merely a shadow of their true forms, once mighty guardians of the galaxy, brought low by a catastrophic war. Linux approached the crystal, its eyes locked on the shimmering prism. As the floof's paw touched the artifact, a surge of energy pulsed through the room. Linux grew before their eyes, its form shifting and expanding until it towered over Alan and Sarah. The human-floof bond deepened, and Alan felt a flood of ancient memories and knowledge pour into his mind. He saw the galaxy as it once was, felt the weight of the floof's responsibility as its protectors, and understood the terrible choice they had made to ensure their survival. "The prism of awakening," Linux's voice resonated in Alan's head, deeper and more powerful than ever before. "With this, we can restore our people and stand against the Zorgax once more." As they prepared to leave with their newfound treasure, the ship's emergency systems flared to life. A distress beacon activated, broadcasting their location to any nearby Zorgax vessels. "We need to move," Sarah urged, already heading for the exit with Zephyr at her heels. They raced through the corridors, the ship groaning and shuddering around them. As they reached their shuttle, the first Zorgax warships appeared on the scanners, closing in fast. Alan clutched the prism of awakening to his chest as they blasted away from the derelict, Linux and Zephyr, using their newly awakened powers to shield the shuttle from enemy fire. The chase was on, and the future of the stars hung in the balance. As they rejoined their ragtag fleet, Alan knew their lives had changed forever. The true nature of the floofs was revealed, and with it, hope for a future free from Zorgak's tyranny. But the road ahead would be fraught with danger, as the Empire would stop at nothing to claim the power of the floofs for themselves. The stolen Zorgak's battleship became the rebels' mobile headquarters as they plotted their next move. Alan pored over the intelligence they had gathered, his fingers tracing paths across star charts, while Linux's massive form curled protectively around him. "There," Alan said, tapping a blinking icon. "The Dreadnought, Emperor Sakari's flagship." Sarah leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "Heavily fortified. We'd be lucky to get within a parsec without being blown to atoms." Zephyr chirped, projecting an image of shimmering energy fields into their minds. Sarah nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "You're right. We don't need to get close. Not when we have you." Days later, Alan found himself crouched in a dimly lit corridor aboard the Dreadnought, his heart pounding. Linux stood beside him, a towering presence of rippling muscle and iridescent fur. The floof's eyes glowed with an inner fire as it scanned for threats. Zorgak's soldiers rounded the corner, their weapons raised. Before Alan could react, Linux moved with impossible speed. Claws flashed, and the soldiers crumpled without a sound. "Clear," Linux's deep voice resonated in Alan's mind. They pressed on, the ship's vast halls echoing with the sounds of battle. Human rebels fought alongside awakened floofs, their coordinated attacks catching the Zorgaks off guard. A deafening roar shook the deck plates. Alan stumbled, steadying himself against a bulkhead. Through the viewport, he saw a massive figure locked in combat with a Zorgak's battlesuit. General Kravox had joined the fray. Linux's muscles tensed. "I must face him." Alan nodded, squeezing his companion's furry shoulder. "Be careful." As Linux bounded away, Alan keyed his communicator. "Sarah, what's your status?" Static crackled, then Sarah's voice came through. "Almost at the bridge. Zephyr's working on the security systems now. We'll have control soon, and—" Her words cut off in a burst of interference. Alan quickened his pace, worry gnawing at his gut. He rounded a corner and froze. Emperor Sakari stood before him, resplendent in ornate armor. In his hands he held a familiar crystal. "The Prism of Awakening," Alan breathed. Sakari's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Indeed, your foolish rebellion ends here." The Emperor raised the prism, its light pulsing with sickly energy. A wave of force slammed into Alan, driving him to his knees. Through the haze of pain, he saw Linux stumble, roaring in anguish as Sakari's corrupted power took hold. All around, floofs turned on their human companions. Claws that had once defended now slashed with deadly intent. The ship rang with cries of betrayal and desperation. Alan gritted his teeth, fighting against the prism's influence. He locked eyes with Linux, seeing the struggle behind his friend's gaze. "Remember," he gasped. "Remember who you are, what we've been through." For a moment, nothing changed. Then, like a dam breaking, Linux's eyes cleared. The floof shook its massive head and let out a defiant roar that shook the very foundations of the ship. One by one, the enthralled floofs broke free of Sakari's control. The Emperor's triumphant expression faltered, twisting into a mask of fury. He raised the prism again, but Linux was faster. The floof's paw swatted the crystal from Sakari's grasp. It arced through the air, shattering against the far wall in a burst of prismatic light. Sakari stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief. Without a word, he turned and fled, disappearing into the depths of his flagship. The deck shuddered beneath Alan's feet. Through the viewport, he saw General Kravox's battlesuit listing, sparks erupting from its joints. A cheer went up from the rebel forces as the fearsome commander fell. Alan's communicator crackled to life. Sarah's voice, breathless but triumphant, filled the air. "We've done it! The bridge is ours!" As Alan watched the floofs and humans embrace, their bond stronger than ever, he knew this was only the beginning. The Dreadnought was theirs, but Sakari had escaped. The war for the galaxy's freedom was a long way to go. Linux padded to Alan's side, nuzzling his hand. Together they gazed out at the stars, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Ahead, the Dreadnought's capture marked a turning point, but the war was far from won. Within days, news of their victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Oppressed worlds, long suffering under Zorgak's rule, found new courage. The ranks of the rebellion swelled as countless beings rallied to their cause, inspired by the revelation of the Floof's true nature as ancient guardians. Alan stood on the bridge of the commandeered dreadnought, now christened Liberty's Dawn. He gazed at the holographic display of newly liberated systems, a small smile playing on his lips. Sarah approached, her arm in a sling but her eyes bright with purpose. "Another 3 planets have declared for the rebellion in the Orion sector," she reported. Alan nodded, but before he could respond, Linux's massive form tensed beside him. The Floof's eyes glazed over, a low growl rumbling in its chest. "Linux? What's wrong?" Alan asked, concern etching his features. The Floof's voice echoed in his mind, tinged with pain and confusion. "The prism, its energies, they're twisting, corrupting." Alarms blared across the ship. Sarah rushed to a console, her fingers flying over the controls. Multiple distress signals coming in from Vega Prime, Novus 3, and Centauri Beta. The view screen flickered to life, displaying scenes of chaos and destruction. Cities lay in ruins as monstrous creatures rampaged through the streets. It took Alan a moment to recognize the beast for what they were. Floofs, hideously mutated and driven mad. "By the stars," Sarah whispered, horror evident in her voice. Linux's mental voice cut through the shock. "Sakari, he's found a way to corrupt our connection to the prism. If this spreads..." Alan's mind raced, piecing together the implications. "We need to stop this at the source. Sarah, can you track where these attacks originated?" She nodded, her fingers already dancing across the controls. After a tense moment, she looked up. "I've got it. All signs point to Kraxathu, a heavily fortified Zorgak's world." "Then that's where we're going," Alan declared. He turned to Linux, meeting the Floof's gaze. "We'll need our best for this one. Gather the team." Hours later, Alan found himself crouched in the cargo hold of a stolen Zorgak shuttle, surrounded by a strike force of human rebels and their Floof companions. The air was thick with tension as they approached Kraxathu's formidable defenses. Sarah's voice crackled over the comm. "Initiating stealth protocols. Zephyr's masking our energy signature. We should be invisible to their sensors." The shuttle shuddered as it entered Kraxathu's atmosphere. Through the viewports, Alan caught glimpses of a barren, rocky landscape dotted with sprawling industrial complexes. At the center of it all loomed a massive fortress, its spires piercing the blood-red sky. "That's our target," Alan murmured, pointing to the fortress. "Sakari's weapons facility. We get in, destroy the bioweapon, and get out." The shuttle touched down in a secluded ravine. As the team disembarked, Linux's fur bristled, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Be on guard. The air here, it reeks of corruption." They moved swiftly across the rocky terrain, using the natural formations for cover. As they neared the fortress, the sound of alarms filled the air. Zorgak's troops poured from the entrance, their weapons primed. "So much for stealth," Sarah muttered, readying her blaster. The battle erupted in a fury of energy blasts and Floof-enhanced attacks. Alan and his team fought their way through wave after wave of Zorgak's soldiers, inching closer to the fortress entrance. Suddenly, a piercing screech filled the air. From the depths of the fortress emerged a nightmarish sight. Floofs twisted into monstrous forms, their eyes glowing with unnatural rage. Linux roared, a sound filled with sorrow and fury. "We must end this madness." As they pressed forward, Alan caught sight of a familiar figure fleeing deeper into the fortress, Emperor Sakari himself, clutching a vial of sickly green liquid. "After him!" Alan shouted, spurring the team onward. They raced through winding corridors, battling both Zorgak's guards and mutated Floofs. The air grew thick with acrid smoke and the stench of chemicals. Finally, they burst into a vast chamber filled with bubbling vats and complex machinery, the heart of Sakari's bioweapon operation. The Emperor stood at the far end, a mad gleam in his eyes. "You're too late," he cackled, raising the vial. "With this, I'll turn every floof in the galaxy into my personal army of destruction." Before anyone could react, Sakari smashed the vial on the ground. A noxious cloud billowed outward, engulfing the room. Alan's heart raced as he watched Linux and the other floofs tense, their fur standing on end. For a moment, it seemed as if Sakari's plan had succeeded. Then Linux let out a defiant roar, his form glowing with inner light. The other floofs followed suit, the power of the Prism of Awakening burning away the corrupting influence. Sakari's triumphant expression faltered. "Impossible!" With a snarl of rage, the Emperor smacked his palm onto a nearby console. Warning klaxons blared as the facility began to shake. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," an emotionless voice announced. "Detonation in 5 minutes." Sakari turned and fled, disappearing through a hidden passage. Linux bounded after him without hesitation. "Linux, wait!" Alan called, but the floof was already gone. Sarah grabbed Alan's arm, her face pale. "We need to evacuate now!" Alan hesitated, torn between following Linux and ensuring the safety of the team. The facility shuddered again, more violently this time. "Go," he said finally, meeting Sarah's gaze. "Get everyone out. I'm going after Linux." Before she could protest, Alan sprinted in the direction Linux had disappeared. The passage led him upward, through twisting corridors that opened onto a wide platform overlooking a sea of molten rock. There, silhouetted against the fiery landscape, stood Linux and Sakari, locked in a titanic struggle. Energy crackled around them as they traded blows, each impact shaking the very foundations of the fortress. Alan watched in awe as Linux, his oldest friend and companion, fought with all the power and majesty of the ancient guardian he truly was. But even as the floof gained the upper hand, Sakari's mad laughter rang out. "You've lost," the Emperor cried. "Even if you defeat me, the bioweapon has already been released. It will spread across the galaxy, corrupting every floof it touches. Your precious guardians will become the instruments of your downfall." Linux hesitated, his eyes meeting Alan's across the platform. In that moment, Alan understood what had to be done, and the terrible price it would demand. "Linux, no!" Alan shouted, but it was too late. The floof's body began to glow with an intensity that hurt to look at directly. Linux closed his eyes, drawing upon the last remnants of the prism's power. The air itself seemed to warp and twist around him. With a final, mournful look at Alan, Linux leapt into the sea of molten rock below, taking Sakari with him. The resulting explosion of energy was blinding, a shockwave that threatened to tear the planet apart. Alan fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he watched his closest friend sacrifice everything to defend the cosmos. As the platform began to crumble beneath him, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Sarah stood there, her eyes glistening. "We have to go," she said softly. Numbly, Alan allowed her to lead him to the waiting shuttle. As they blasted off from the disintegrating planet, he watched the fiery maelstrom below, knowing that somewhere in that inferno, Linux had made the ultimate sacrifice. The shuttle joined the rebel fleet in orbit, leaving behind the smoldering ruins of Sakari's regime and the noble guardian who had given everything to stop it. As stars streaked past the viewport, Alan clenched his fists. Linux was gone, but his legacy would live on. The fight for freedom was nowhere near the end, and Alan vowed to see it through. For Linux, for the floofs, and for the future of the galaxy itself.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.